Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and in this video, we're going to bring some knives back to life. Normally Fridays are my recipe video day, but I'm going to deviate from that just a little bit this week. I am going to stay in the kitchen though, and I'm going to talk about what I feel is the most important tool in your kitchen, the knife. I think it goes without saying that knives should be treated with respect, and I mean that in two ways. I mean that both in taking care of the knife, its overall condition and sharpness, which is going to be the major theme of this video, but also just in how you use it, things you should and shouldn't do with a knife in the kitchen. And to that end, I think it's important to note that a dull knife generally is more dangerous than a sharp knife. A dull knife is more likely to slip when you're slicing something or chopping. And when you do, generally you're using more force because it's a dull knife, which means if you hit some part of your body, you're hitting it with more force. There have been times when I've cut myself using the knives that I sharpen that I wasn't even aware that I cut myself. They were that sharp. And just a little bit of direct pressure and they sealed right up because the cut itself was so fine. Now, I'm not recommending that you try this out at home, but I just wanted to share the importance of having a sharp knife. I think another common misconception when it comes to knives is the honing rod. Some people think that this device is designed to sharpen a knife. It does not. All it does is it straightens out a very fine edge on the blade. So over time, as you use your knife, the edge here will start to bend just a little, sometimes a little bit more. And you can feel it, I'm going to do this from your perspective, when you rub your thumb or finger away from the blade. That's important. Now this doesn't have that edge, but if it does, we take care of it with the honing rod. You know, you watch some of these professional chefs, they just fly. I don't quite have that degree of confidence. So the honing steel, not used for sharpening. It's used really for sort of day-to-day use. I like to use it before slicing and then after cleaning before I put it back in the knife rack. This right here has become my new favorite knife. You've probably seen it in a lot of the recent videos. And I'm probably going to pronounce this incorrectly because it's Vietnamese. If any of you can spell it phonetically for me down in the comments below, please do. But it's a Dao Vua knife. So it's D-A-O-V-U-A knife. And I got this from Milk Street, the Milk Street store, and probably overpaid for it. You can get a very similar knife a lot cheaper out on Amazon, whether it's a Dao Vua, again, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or just a Serbian cleaver is very, very similar. Now, this is made from recycled spring steel. So it's carbon steel, which means it rusts pretty easily. When it's exposed to acid as well, from say a tomato or a lemon or something like that, you want to make sure that you're getting it clean right away and dried, and then apply a food grade oil to it to keep it from rusting. Now, someone in my household felt that they could just wash this and then put it in the dish rack and let it air dry. And you can see the rust that is on this blade right now. Now, in terms of overall sharpness, it's okay. I mean, it's not scalpel sharp, it's not razor sharp at the moment. So we'll be correcting that once we get this blade cleaned up. Now we're going to run this through a couple of quick tests to show you how sharp or dull the knife is before I start. First off, I've got just sort of a flimsy cash register receipt here, and we're just going to slice down. It's kind of, it's not really, okay, there, we finally got one, but it took like 3 or 4 passes, and it's not a real clean slice. But in the real world, we're not going to be slicing through receipts, we're going to be slicing through food. And I've got a fairly ripe garden tomato. Lots of times on these videos, you'll see them do something where they just kind of glide it across like that, which is not working here. I've got sort of a blemish here. I'll just sort of slice. That's not bad. I mean, most people would probably consider this sufficiently sharp, but I'm not most people. So we're going to start by getting this blade cleaned up, get rid of the rust. I'm going to start by wetting the blade. And then I have some Barkeeper's Friend. This stuff is great on stainless steel, aluminum, carbon steel, porcelain, all kinds of stuff. Just a little sprinkle. And then I'm going to use Adobe pad here. Now as I start getting near the blade, I want to make sure that I'm going away from the edge of the blade. I don't have to be directly perpendicular, but I want to make sure that I'm not coming towards the blade in any way, because first off, it's going to cut up my Adobe pad, and then next, it'll wind up cutting up my finger, and I want neither of that. And we'll give this a rinse. Hit the other side. And the final rinse. That is looking much better. Now we'll dry this off. And then before it starts to oxidize, we're going to hit it with any sort of food grade oil, just very lightly. I'm going to rub it down. And then I'm going to take my dry part of the paper towel. Get it the rest of the way. I mean, all you really need is practically a microscopic coating of oil just to keep it from oxidizing. Now, this is not necessary on stainless steel blades, I have found. But if you do have something that's carbon steel or prone to oxidation, absolutely oil the blade. Next, we're going to sharpen the blade. And what I like to use, although you can use whatever you want, I use the Chef's Choice Trizor XV, or perhaps that's Roman numerals for 15, because this re-edges the blade for you at 15 degrees. Generally, most American and European blades are at 20 degrees. Most Asian blades are at 15. That tighter angle creates a sharper edge. Now, we don't need to re-edge this, so we won't be using phase 1 of this, at least on this knife. So I'm just going to hit it with a few pulls through level 2 and then level 3 before we move on to the final razor sharp step. For stage 2, or the honing stage of the sharpening, we want to pull the blade through at about a 3 to 4 second pace, doing each side probably 2 to 3 times. More if it's a blade that's never been sharpened. For stage 3, which is the polishing phase, again, we're going to pull it through at about a 3 to 4 second per side pace. And we're going to alternate sides, hitting each side probably 3 times, though you may want to hit it a couple additional times if you've never sharpened this particular blade. Then we'll give it 2 more pulls quickly, about 1 second per side, hitting each side another 2 to 3 times. At this point, you can test your knife for sharpness and decide if you want to do any additional polishing. Now, one of the things I've noticed with the Trizor is it does have a tendency to leave some fine scratch marks along the blade. So if you have some really expensive knives that you want to have basically a mirror type finish on, I would say that's probably not where you want to go. I think you probably are going to want to use a whetstone for your sharpening. But then again, if you've got that sort of expensive knife, you probably know that already. Back to my cleaver here. Let's see how it behaves now that I've run it through the electric sharpener. Quite a bit better. But we're not quite there yet. Next up, I've got a strop. This is what's called a paddle strop. It has 2 sides. One side is sort of a rougher, I don't know what I would call it, somewhere between leather and felt. The other side, smooth leather. As I sharpen, I want to maintain that 15-degree angle that I had before. So one way to sort of approximate that is you can lay it at 90, and then you figure half of that is 45, and then about a third of that is 15. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag away from the blade, just sliding it across, making sure that I get the entire edge of the blade. So depending on the shape of the blade, you may need to pull it at a slight diagonal. You may even need to rotate your wrist a little bit. But I'm going to do this 10 times on the first side, and then I'm going to repeat with the other side. Again, maintaining that 15-degree angle. And after we've done this 10 times, now we're going to alternate. One side, the other side, one side, the other side, and do this probably between 5 and 10 times per side. All right, then we'll flip over to the smooth side, and I'm going to go 5 times, first away from myself, and the other direction, and finally alternating 5 times each side. So how sharp are we now? And as for my tomato, this is no pressure at all, just the weight of the blade, just dragging it across. That's how sharp this is right now. It's butter, I'm telling you. And finally, the shave test. Look at that. This is why I saved this one for last, so that I'm not cutting tomatoes with a hairy knife. My wife is going to come home and be like, why is there leg hair by the sink? And now it's just standard maintenance. I'll wash this, I'll get it dry right away, I'll get it oiled right away, and then back in the knife block. Now you may be thinking, okay, that's great, you had a nice knife to start out with, but what if I've got like a really ratty thrift store sort of knife? Can you make that razor sharp as well? Well, we're going to do that next.